Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Derby City Fandom Podcast. Today, we are covering something near and dear to all of our hearts. And I can't play anymore because this song is super copyrighted. But yes, we're talking about Halo, with the TV series having been wrapped up with Halo Season 2 over on Paramount, I believe. And with there being a number of games out, the latest one coming out about 3 years ago now.
I actually teared up a little bit listening to that.
So nostalgic,
It is,
right?
man. It is.
I don't know about tearing up and shit, but okay.
But yes, we're talking Halo. There is so much lore.
Yeah, so
Just inside the games, but we also have the TV series, which is, Jake and I got into an argument about what is considered like canon and non-canon. So the TV show is non-canon because
Correct.
the games and the several books and the one comic and the anime all are considered canon by the fandom and by the company that made it, Bungie, and subsequently 343.
Right.
you want to get into this conversation right now? Are we starting out with the
we
canon
can.
versus non-canon argument?
I mean, we can, but
No, I'm
where
already intrigued. Let's go. Let's roll.
Okay,
All
we're
right,
rolling.
So full disclosure, Kenny has not seen the series, but you've
I
played
plan
all the
on
games,
it.
right?
I've played just about all the games. I have not played the most recent one. I have played the free online multiplayer, but you'd had to pay for the campaign.
Have you read
I
any of
do
the
know what
books?
happens. I've read 2 of them.
Okay, so Kenny's probably have you read the books, Colin?
Nope.
All right,
There's
so
like 30 of
Only
them,
the games.
so I don't blame you.
I haven't read the books myself either, so I've only played Halo 2, a little bit of Halo 1, but I've watched the series. I think Colin's watched both seasons.
You will get a general gist of what's going on in the universe as a whole, but there's a lot of finer details you're missing.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, where we're starting out here is Kenny's probably the most background covered, like in terms of lore, compared to the other 2 here. But going back to the canon argument is, all right, Colin, I get frustrated with fans. I'm complaining about complaining because
Everybody loves to complain.
they're so nitpicky. It's like, oh well, I hated Halo Season 1 because it wasn't canon enough and it just didn't fit. It's like, all right, hang on, take a break. Like, let's just be grateful that someone was willing to invest and spend the money to make this so we can enjoy it. Like, I want a good product. I don't want it to be completely crap. But to completely disregard something because it's not completely canon, it's like, who are you to determine what's canon and what's not canon? Like, this is my big beef with Star Wars. Like, everyone bashes Star Wars things constantly. I'm like, dude, you didn't even... Like, all this is made up. So it's like, just shut up and just enjoy it.
Yeah, but in their defense, it's just like, okay, when something that has been canon for 20-something years, and then Disney, when they acquire the rights to it, are saying, like, yeah, no, none of that matters. Only the movies matter. And a handful of video games. And a handful of comics.
Back to your initial argument before we started this, you were saying, all right, so Star Wars, George Lucas pretty much determines like what's canon. What's
Yes,
not
as the owner and the creator of the property.
and he sold it to Disney. Like, you might not like that. You may hate Disney for whatever reason, or you may really love it for whatever reason.
Doesn't make it any better.
But in their defense, like, George Lucas sold the rights to Star Wars to Disney. So whatever Disney says or does, technically that makes it canon. Like, I don't care what the fan base thinks. Like, it is what it is.
So
That's my argument.
to tie this back to Halo, the reason why is because there's a lot of differences in the lore that occur between the TV series on Paramount and the video games and the other pieces of media. I can go down the list if you want me to. But I figured that we can probably start off with a TV series, and then I can do my lore dump on everything else.
Yeah, I was hoping to kind of keep this conversation focused on the series.
Sure. We'll start there then.
You want me to go first?
You know what? Go ahead.
All right.
Colin, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you all?
Fantastic.
Groovy. So I'll do my usual spiel
Yes.
with ratings
Yes,
for the
IMDb
series.
us.
IMDb has a score of 7.3 out of 10 at the moment.
Is that for all of it or just a season in particular?
That is.
See, I think it's low. And what's the critiques? I guarantee it's the stupid canon critique.
It possibly, but there's.
I guarantee it.
And with Rotten Tomatoes, it's at a even 80%.
See, I like that much better.
So
like 80, I would probably put it at 85 for me. I really liked it.
Now, I guess also full disclosure, I do know some of what happens in the series just because I've done research on the canon versus the non-canon stuff and where the differences are, but I haven't seen the show.
Yeah. And maybe that's probably why because I haven't read the books. Like, I played Halo 2, but it's been 15 years since I played it.
I can fix that.
So, my argument, like, against the canon argument is probably because I don't really remember a lot of the canon or never knew it.
Fair.
But just
you
to have
just
the
thought
culture,
it was fun first-person shooter where you got to shoot aliens and do some cool shit.
Well, I don't want to go that far. It's the game's plot, like the main... What do you call that? The main...
No, you were right. The main plot.
The main plot. It's like I remember really enjoying that, so I'm fine with that. But I thought the TV series did a really good job trying to make the references. I mean, I always have critiques of it, but it's not because I don't think they connected the two, like the games and the books, to the movie wrong. Like,
sure. Now, I will agree with some people that I do think that the TV series is a good starting point because it gives you a good general overarching concept of what's going on in the universe, like the different problems that exist and how humanity is trying to solve it or not solve it because they lose a lot.
Yeah.
And they show that.
Then they show it.
Yeah, they have a lot of different plots going on. I mean, what's your thoughts, Colin? Do you agree with more of the Rotten Tomatoes score? Would you rank it lower, higher? You were kind of fantasy.
I wouldn't go higher than 85. I'd probably stick. My gut's telling me more like 82, 83. I would go higher probably than 80, but not higher than 85. So between 80 and 85 for sure. The series as a whole has me hooked. Now, granted, season 1, I had my doubts because season 1 had its moments in the story where things were just it just wasn't doing it for me, right?
Sure.
And then season 2 came along, and actually the story started to progress. The season started to progress and actually get more, action filled. That kind of POV where they're shooting the camera from the helmet of the individual.
Is it like the game in that regard?
In season 2, they do it better. In season 1, not so much.
Yeah, you made a good point, and I agree 100% with you, Colin. One of my questions I had for you was, did you like the overall plot or plots of the TV series? And I can go first to kind of tell you how I really went into it with more of the focus of this is going to be Mankind, Spartans versus Covenant.
Sure.
I know it's not going to be constantly action-packed. You always have the limitations, the financial limitations, whatever. But my impression was like, all right, this is going to be kind of some Spartans killing some Covenant. It's going to be kind of badass and action-packed.
Were you thrown off by the insurrection then?
No.
Like the rebels?
No. I kind of expected that. Because, basically, the way I see it, and I kind of saw this in the game too, like, the Covenant is pretty much against everybody, and there's the humans and the soldiers, and they're on a whatever planet they may be. They have to adapt and survive, and sure, some planets are
Some planets
have
get
less
wrecked.
resources, so obviously there's going to be like the middle class and lower class, and then obviously the upper class. You're going to see that on the planets, and they show that on a few of them in the series, and so I definitely saw that the what am I trying to say? The soldiers and everybody, they're going to kind of do their own thing, but they have the shit. What am I trying to say?
Peasants?
You have the upper class doing their thing.
Anyway, I forgot where I was going, but it shows, and I enjoyed the series.
Okay.
I'll come back to it. I forgot.
Fair enough.
My argument,
we'll give you a moment.
Going back to like this plot question is, I really went into it thinking it's going to be more action packed. Spartans, Mankind versus Covenant, and there seemed to be a lot of focus on Kwan's character and her storyline, Dr. Halsey, and like that whole family dynamic going on.
No, admittedly,
Soren and his family, like that whole dynamic. Like I was fine with kind of looping that he's a former Spartan, this and that. Like that was kind of cool to see. And then the last one's like Master Chief and Mackie. Like kind of, I don't know. It's just I didn't care for those.
Some of those are just okay. The fans know the extra lore like behind the characters, so they tried to make like mentions of it in the series. It sounds
yeah, but
like.
they were way beyond mentions, right?
Yeah.
To me, they were entirely scripted plot lines within the series. It's like, dude, I want to see some war scenes. Like, I want to see some battles. What was the main? I mean, obviously, the main drive, the main plot is they're trying to find the Halo, right? So.
Well, they don't even know that the Halo is a thing. They just know that it's some random like super weapon.
Well, that's fair enough. But when they do find out that they're figuring out the Halo, but the whole main plot should be the giant, like this giant war taking place instead of worrying about this family dynamics and all. It's like come on, man.
The Covenant have arrived and we're getting our asses kicked. Now, the funny thing that they don't mention, I think, in the show at least, is that the Covenant and humanity have been fighting each other for a while by the time that we see it even in the show.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in the games.
And I'm fine with that. Like I'm okay with they didn't have to start from day one. But I'm fine with being thrown into the middle of the war. I just didn't care for getting taken into these different plot lines. Like I just did not.
Was it too political for you?
Yeah, exactly.
Too geopolitical?
It was. I mean, I don't know if political is the right word. It's just too much drama, like
Okay.
family drama, relationship drama. It's like, dude, these Spartans are supposed to be badasses. Like, I want to see them fight and kill things.
And they are, for the most part. Some of them get a raw deal.
Yeah, some of it worked. Like, some of Master Chief's, like with Cortana and Dr. Halsey, like being the mom, like, I don't mind seeing some of that. But other than the family dynamic, like Kwan's plotline, didn't care for. Soren's plotline, didn't care for it. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it, Colin?
I don't care one bit about Quan.
Yeah, and I think there's a
couldn't
reason.
care less.
I think that showed because there was a lot less of her. I mean, I don't want to say a lot less. There was still quite a bit in season 2, but compared to season 1,
Compared to
it's
season,
night and day difference.
She's hardly even. She is a minor character in season 1, but come season 2, she ends up being a pretty significant character, and she has this whole background, and she's able to read and whatever, like cave drawing, painting kind of things, ancient kind of shit like that. And
Yes.
the whole priestess thing that was going on there, I was just like, dude, who the fuck cares?
Part of that comes back to the overt spiritualism that they try to push in the video games with, like, Covenant, the Ark, High Charity, the prophets of truth, mercy, and regret.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
religion is just everywhere in this franchise. You can't escape it.
I know, but I think they show it perfectly with the Covenant. Like, you don't need to have so much focus and time and effort dedicated to Kwan's character.
Fair.
I agree with Colin 100%. So I think we're kind of on the same page of that.
It sounds like they needed a human version of like what was going on for the aliens.
I mean, they try their best with Mackie, right?
McKee.
Okay.
Yeah, see, she kind of got boring for me in season 1, but season 2, when she inevitably came back into the scheme of things, if you will, her character started to get more bold, intense. She started to realize her potential, but her and Master Chief are pretty much connected in a way.
Yes, and I know the reason why.
You want to
From the other lore bits, from the games and the books. But so they do interact with each other.
Yeah,
John Halo and Maki.
So they
they
have
bang,
face to
man.
face interactions, in the beginning,
They're banging.
and then what?
They're banging, right?
Well, yeah, but no.
They
But then they go their separate ways, and so they in the middle of a conversation with somebody, like McKee or John will have this fucking vision, and they're both on where the planet where the Halo is, and they're basically going back and forth this is the right thing to do, blah blah blah. No, we gotta protect humanity, blah blah blah. Fuck humanity, this that, and the other. I don't know, fucking it is boring, but it's also essential because there's clearly a connection there. I would like
Season 3 bait.
I would like to expand on that, and
Okay.
that's end of season 2. They kind of obviously get to the Halo part.
Yes. Oh gosh, the Halos though. So those serve multiple purposes, granted. So they are both instruments that are designed to stop the flood, but they're also instruments to stop everything.
Yeah, they just eradicate everything, right?
Yes. So the idea behind
the Covenant, they don't realize it's a weapon.
they don't, because there are a bunch
humans
of
know.
only through different means with Cortana interacting with the different AI, which I believe is
Because the Covenant just thinks it's like
313. Basically, one of the monitors, the floating light bulbs, as they're lovingly called by Johnson. But he's Guilty Spark. There we go. I had to remember the name. They all have fun, creative names. But Guilty Spark is a dickhead. But he knows all the knowledge, so he can get away with it in the video games. But yeah, they eventually learn in the video games that the Halos are this is what was created to stop the flood, because we couldn't find a way to stop the flood. So the way we stop the flood is to eradicate all life that the flood could eat, including the flood. So the plan was just to eventually starve out the flood through life not existing, and then repopulating afterwards because of how different lore bits work, which I'll go into later. But I don't believe they go that far into the show.
No.
I think they go to a Halo maybe, or at least they bring up Halo.
They make it to a Halo.
My understanding is that they
go
go
multiple
ahead.
times, right? So they're
They only go to one.
but they can envision. Is it the same one?
It's the same one. It's the same planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine they go to what is. It's funny because this Halo is called Halo 04, and it's called Alpha Halo, despite being the 4th Halo in the line. That's a lore discrepancy that bothers me to no end. But yeah, Alpha Halo or Installation 4 is where they go to in the first video game.
Right.
So the flood. I mean, once again, I'm not too familiar with that. Is
Sure.
that in season 2? Is that what's
That's what they allude to in some of the visions, from what I've read.
killing everybody in season 2? Is that the flood? Do you know, Colin?
Towards the end, the zombie virus.
The zombie virus?
Yeah, the zombie virus. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
the flood.
Yeah.
That's a question for you, Colin. All right. And you, Kenny, hypothetically,
Sure.
you come across this ancient biolab, and there's this corpse laying there. So you're a doctor, you're a scientist, you gain access to it. There's this corpse.
I read the review for this episode, and it bothers me to no end.
There's this corpse laying there, grasping a canister. So you take this canister, you take it back to your lab. Would you open it?
Not in an open air environment.
But of course they open it. This thing
I mean,
starts
it's-
killing everybody.
I'm getting Pandora's box kind of vibes for real. No, you shouldn't open a freaking random box of corpses.
Let's be real, I'd probably open it.
Jake, I
Sorry,
feel
guys.
like you're the person that would
Sorry, mankind.
wander into your attic, find a random chest up there, a random box, that's been there probably for who knows how long, or like you're just now finding it for the first time, and you're like, hey, that wasn't there. I wonder what's in it.
When they first got in
Like
there,
that's how you get cursed, man.
weren't they like, this is a lab? No, this is a library. Did they say something like that, or I just make that up?
They were trying to.
They were trying to decipher what it was, and I think they came to the conclusion that it was a lab or something like that. And I was just like,
That might be a game reference because you go to like this big area that's like the longest level in Halo 2 is called the library.
yeah, library, yeah.
Which you go through that entire mission, you fight the Some Covenant at the beginning, then you fight a lot of the Flood, all to the soundtrack of an instrumental Breaking Benjamin song.
Right. And so, like they go through this whole thing of like crossing a bridge and then open doors and shit like that, whatever, and they get into that library lab, whatever the fuck, and they find shit, and then they're on their way out essentially, and below the bridge, I guess, is this
It's kind of
city
booty trap kind of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting like Indiana Jones vibes.
Had Indiana
I'm
Jones
gonna
on it, which is
switch
kinda
this
cool.
out with a bag of sand.
I thought it was kind of fun to watch.
No, like it was cool to watch and everything, but I was just like, really, like, what about this seems like a good idea? Like, yeah, I'm intrigued by all this ancient civilization shit, but at the same time, like, karma's a bitch. Don't fuck with shit.
Curiosity, man, it gets the best of all of us.
Curiosity killed the cat.
And most of humanity and the universe, in fact.
All right, you guys want to talk Cortana here for a second?
How was Cortana in the series?
I liked her.
So that was one of the big critiques online.
Was it?
I guess it was it was definitely or I don't know if it was recasted, but she looked different.
She wasn't recast. She got a haircut.
Yeah.
Well, there was more than just a haircut, but
So
that's season 2.
That's a weird thing because in the video games, like the model for Cortana changes all the time.
Does
like, it's weird because the model gets like more like feminine over like the different games. So you can argue that, oh, hey, this AI character gets more sexy as time goes on. So maybe that's something that people were complaining about in the show.
Well, I think the critique for season 1 was Cortana looked too human and didn't really compared to like the games and how she's described in the books.
Okay,
so people, the internet tended to agree more with season 2 of how she looked in season 2.
Yeah,
where I
she
disagree.
does look more digital in the games.
I thought she looked better in season 1, but season 2 she looks a little more digital to me. According to Colin, it's just a haircut. But
yeah. So is it like, did they just like film a person and like behind with a green screen behind them and just throw like a blue filter over them?
I'm not for sure, but she definitely looks more human in season 1. Like I don't want to say, she didn't look human. I mean, she looked more like a
artificial, like she's supposed to be.
But still, to me it was night and day difference. But I like the season 1 better. Personally.
Okay.
Do you have a preference, Colin? I guess you didn't. Did you not pick it up?
I didn't really pick up on that.
I think the voices.
I mean, I noticed like a
the
physical
voices were
change, but
different.
like not a AI sort of change.
Yeah.
You know.
I know that they had 2 different people be her. I think one was like when the model wasn't on screen, and then like you had like the motion capture person that was her, right? So I think we are looking at like Christina Bennington and then Jen Taylor. I think Christina was like the last season, while Jen Taylor was, I guess, technically all of them.
Yeah, I don't know.
At least according to the IMDb credits.
I clearly did not pick up on that. I might have to rewatch it.
Fair.
Yeah, it was a big ado, man. Not for me, but for the internet.
Sure.
Season 1 was better.
Okay.
Cortana season 1.
What? Well, for you, I guess what initially turned me off on the series was A, not having Paramount, but then B, like when it first came out, I heard a lot of like mid reviews. Like, okay, this show isn't bad, but it's not great. It was just kind of mid for most of it.
Well, let's talk about what we really liked about it.
Sure. Granted, I haven't seen it, so this is mostly you two discussing.
So obviously, I've been being negative on it so far this episode, but
What did it do good?
I really enjoyed it, and part of it is because I'd had so much fun playing Halo 2 growing up.
Okay.
So I had that connection to it, and just being able to see it on, not the big screen, but to see it on television, like streaming that series, I thought it was awesome. I disagree with some of the decisions, like where they spent the time on the plot. Like I wanted to see more action, but just seeing these references, I thought the Spartan outfits were badass. I think that was really cool. There's a lot of references, like with the scorpions and the weapons, and they did a really good job connecting all of those references and the costumes and everything like that. And I don't know, I mean, I'd be curious your thoughts, Colin, but I thought the Spartan suits were absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I really liked them. And that was some of my favorite parts is like whenever they would put them on, I'm like, let's go. And it's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the issues with season 2 is they spent budget cuts probably, but they spent a lot of time not wearing them. And that was part of the plot. Was like, oh, they stole my suit or whatever. And he's trying to get it back. It's like, okay. But when the times when they were wearing them, I'm like, it's so fun. It was so cool to watch.
Yeah. So, I guess just in lore, like, there's some fun stuff that happens with the suits, especially with the Mjolnir Mark 1s that we see John Halo have, John 117, Master Chief, whatever you want to call him.
And then let's say the cherry on top was the Battle for Reach was awesome.
So that is a big point. A lot of people's favorite game was Halo Reach, which came after Halo 3, which is technically a prequel to the first game. When the first game released, when Halo Combat Evolved, Halo CE first released, it also released side by side with a book called Halo The Fall of Reach, which was the tie-in to what was going on before the first game started.
Yeah.
And then something like 8 to 9 years later, they finally made a video game about it.
So the episodes that they had with the battle scenes, they knocked it out of the park for me. Like the Battle Reach was badass, and that was them without the suits. Like I mentioned, like in the show, they have the suits are kind of stolen, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
But just watching these Spartans just kick ass, and all the you see the tanks, you see the scorpions show up, you see a lot of the weapons. It is so cool. And the other episodes where they have the action scenes, like you see them hopping in and out of warthogs, and it's so much fun to watch.
Sure.
So they needed more of that, to be honest with you.
Fair.
They show, since we're talking about Reach, so they show the Covenant tanks, if you will. I don't remember what they're called.
Wraiths.
Okay, right. So they have those, and then they had the warthogs, they had their ships and everything. But the one thing that stuck out for me was this particular weapon, the Needler.
Yeah.
The fact that, like,
They brought the Needlers
obviously,
in.
like,
Did they get the sound effect right?
yeah, well, I mean, kind of. I don't really remember, but
For those that know, the Needler has a very defined sound effect.
They have the swords, and so those popped up. You see that in like the first episode of season 1.
Do you like the invisibility?
Yeah, that was actually kind of neat too,
cool,
for sure.
That bit's canon.
The Needler, though, like you can hear that pew, 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 like kind of thing, but then like you see them the spikes out,
like sticking people.
Yeah. And then they freaking blow up.
Which is what they do in the game.
Exactly.
So that's fun.
So I was like, that's pretty fucking cool that they actually showed this Spartan just blow up. It's
yeah, so...
And I could be wrong.
Reach is a very dire situation in terms of the lore. Like, what all happens there. So I imagine in the show, do they actually show, like, the proper fall of Reach? Reach does not survive. Full disclosure, if you haven't seen the show yet.
They don't really,
but they don't really.
They don't really explain how and why.
Okay,
they just kind of show that
they show that they win.
Infiltrated Reach through, I don't know, like an old tunnel or an old fort or I don't know.
Sure, okay,
whatever. And then they end up just freaking popping up out of nowhere and killing a bunch of fucking people. But like they don't really explain how
Well, they don't say that humanity has been like losing the war with the Covenant for a very long time, and that Reach is like the last like military stronghold they have.
They do. There's like subtle references if you're paying attention.
Okay.
There's some subtle that part of the show I actually really liked. It's kind of the inner politics of what's going on among humans, like
It's just
especially
like
military
the
leadership.
Covenants are kicking our ass.
Yeah,
We
and they're not
cannot
really,
let them get here.
there's a lot of secrets going on, so not everyone knows what's actually going on. So
Yeah.
Master Chief is connecting all the dots. So that's kind of fun to watch him unravel all that.
Okay.
Yeah, so they touched on a little bit of that.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, I think that's one of the reasons why so many people probably wanted to watch the series was for these episodes. And it's just
They
a shame.
wanted to see how people would react to a live action like the fall of Planet Reach.
Yep, and they did it really well. It worked for me. I absolutely loved it, and that's probably one of the reasons. Like, if they had a season 3, I'd watch it just because of those 1 or 2 episodes that were badass like that. The rest of it, like, eh.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I think the best episode was the fall of Reach, and then when they get to the part where all the
The fight for the Halo
Marine
was pretty cool,
ships meet up with the Covenant ships, and they're all the Spartans are basically being shot out into space, and
Yes, they fly like bricks, by the way.
yeah, I mean they show that, and I think they do a good job. And there's obviously like ships blowing up around them, and so they have to avoid debris when they are going towards the Covenant ship, and some of them actually get knocked out or killed by floating debris. They show that for sure.
Yeah. So I think in lore, after the fall of Reach, the number of like Spartans that exist can be counted basically on 2 hands. Like there are not many left.
So in the show, that's what I was curious about, because in the show they're basically training new Spartans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But they're
so
not the
like
same, though.
They're probably a different number
not the same
in the
caliber.
program, which I'll go into when I get to do my lore dump. But
yeah, so like I don't recall there being that many Spartans, but in the show it looks like they're just like grasping for soldiers and like, hey, you look like you can go through hell and become a Spartan. Here, do this. And the one chick, the Hispanic chick, I forget what the actress's name is, but like she all of a sudden becomes a trainee Spartan.
I think the character's name's Perez, I think.
Oh, Perez.
Yeah.
That name comes up later.
Yeah, like that kind of just turned me off a little bit, but it's cool to see them go through the training and all that, especially with the main 3 Spartans or 4, I guess.
Yeah.
And the training
one
that they go
ex-Spartan.
through, and they're like fighting one another and like using their little jetpacks or whatever, and climbing mountains and falling down waterfalls and
Yeah.
Doing superhuman stuff.
the
you
whole
know, just
rehab
reasons.
thing with what's her face. That was dumb. Could not care less.
Riz?
Yeah.
Terrible name for a character in our day and age. But
Oh, you got Riz.
God.
I still don't understand what that word means.
Charisma.
I don't. Oh, yeah, I don't know.
No, like Riz with the
It comes from charisma. That's a broad definition of how that came about. There's some internet stuff.
I still don't get it. I don't really care.
I don't know.
either.
I'm too old. That's too zoomery for me.
All right, what's next? You want to do a little lore dumping?
Sure, if you want. All right, so this is the point in time where we have to jump back in time by several million years. We're introduced to a couple of alien races. We are introduced to the precursors, the forerunners, as well as the San Sharum, or which are the hierarchy of the covenant. So you have your prophets, like those weird, like worm head guys, and then like a very ancient but technologically advanced human race, all existing at like the same time. So the precursors come up with this idea that because they are more advanced than all the other people, that should push come to shove, that somebody has to take up the mantle of responsibility, basically. Or just the mantle as it's called for the most part. And this mantle is an idea where you're supposed to kind of help the lesser evolved races like exist and survive. Maybe not necessarily shove them along artificially, but make sure that they don't just randomly die out for no good reason. The Forerunners didn't like this idea because the precursors decided to give that to the ancient humanity as opposed to the Forerunners. So naturally, like any other jealous people, they wage a genocidal war against the precursors and eliminate all but like 3 of them. So, as a result of that war, a couple of the precursors that survived. Now, I call it a war. The precursors just gave up. They did not fight back. But because they could change their forms, some of them decided to become like this weird space dust stuff. Now, this space dust would get mutated by cosmic rays, and that is what becomes the flood.
Okay.
So a lot of that built up hatred from the precursors is what kind of drives the flood to, consume everything, right? And this one precursor, which we call the primordial, is locked away on a particular planet and shares like a mental link with an entity of the flood, which is like a collective consciousness of them, which is called a grave mind, which if you played Halo 2, Jake, you might know as the weird like tentacle monster thing that kind of pulls the Arbiter and John aside and be like, hey, stop trying to kill each other and stop them from firing the halos, because if the halo fires off, then everybody dies. Like full disclosure, I am very evil, but I want to live. So you all need to go do this so I don't die. But I digress. So the Forerunners, in their infinite wisdom, decide to set humanity back to a very like caveman state. So they de-evolve humanity so that they're no longer like spacefaring and like these super techno people. The Forerunners then also realize that, oh, hey, ancient humanity at the time was kind of dealing with the flood that had like started to appear at the time. And because of a misunderstanding, they decided to de-evolve them. And they're like, oh, crap, that might have been a mistake. Well, their leader, which is called the Didact, some of this is like Halo 4, I guess, knowledge, I guess, for the record, because that's where we kind of learn who the Forerunners are. Most of the games prior that you are familiar with, it's just the Flood and the Covenant dealing with them. Mm-hmm. So you have the Didact, which is the military leader of the Forerunners, and then you have the Librarian, who is his wife, but it's just like, oh, hey, maybe we should, find a different way to deal with the flood and try to preserve all of life from being eaten and consumed. Okay. So her idea was to create a series of AI, which then create the Halos, because the original idea behind the Halos is that the Halos would store like clones, like DNA of all the different living races, and would have them stored on those Halos so that when the Halos went off and eliminated all possible life that the flood could infect, they would then be able to repopulate the galaxy. That was the original plan. So the two basically break off and wage war against each other. I guess, long story short, go read the books, I suppose, or play Halo 4. The Librarian kind of moderately wins. She locks up the Didact in a prison for several 100,000 years. And he's not too pleasant with that, but at the beginning he is. It's like an artificial world, there's different stuff going on so he can be engaged and not go insane or whatever. Well, naturally, because things go bad, a grave mind manages to corrupt one of the AIs and get him to like work with him. This is who we end up learning to be Mendicant Bias, which is important for the games. It's maybe not important for this episode of the podcast, but basically the grave mind and the AI are working together, and the librarian ends up having to use the reclaimers to basically set off a halo. We learn that the reclaimers are humans because they are the people that have reclaimed the mantle of responsibility. And thus, they are the ones that are able to activate the old Forerunner technology. That is where we see in the games why humanity is important to keep around, even if the Covenant doesn't want them to be. Because they can't ultimately achieve their goal, even if they're misguided in it, if humanity's dead.
Well, good for us.
Good for us, right? Now, a lot of that is on like a weird like genetic DNA level. So some humans can be a reclaimer, some humans cannot be. I think they might demonstrate that in the show where some of them have like special powers and are able to interact with the technology. John Halo is a reclaimer. He's able to interact with the different bits.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, there's in the show, there are certain characters that can interact with these ancient objects.
Sure.
Like turn them on and off and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they would be called reclaimers then. So
I wonder if that's where they're going with Quan then.
yeah, she most definitely is a reclaimer then, just from what you all have told me.
Yeah, I don't know about. I'm not for sure. I don't. She really interacts with any like the Covenant objects, right?
I mean,
Well, that's why the Covenant would have a human person there, though, because she's able to activate the stuff, right?
Well,
I don't think
Quan's
she
not
doesn't
with the
activate anything. Does she? Maybe she does, but she's able to like read the ancient
yeah.
text and kind of shit and like put things together, and that's how these like doors open and all this shit. She's able to figure.
I might have to. I mean, I'm planning on watching it, but okay, I might have to take a look at that. Then.
And so she's having like visions and shit. So there's something.
There's something there. She's special,
her.
So she might be a reclaimer then. So as I was saying, they activate a halo, restart life. The halos repopulate the different planets. Things are more or less okay. Things go bad again, they reset it again. So by the time that we get to the humanity that we know, all life in the Milky Way galaxy has been reset twice.
Sweet.
Sweet, right? So from there, that's where we're introduced to, I guess, humanity in the year 2500.
Mm-hmm. Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm, right? And
Now we have
they
Master
first interact with a religious group that we know and love called the Covenant on a planet called Harvest. And on that planet, a grunt is a little bit too clumsy and accidentally sets off a grenade in the middle of a crowd. Naturally, the crowd responds appropriately and runs the fuck away. The brutes, like the big hairy kind of like Chewbacca people,
Yeah.
the Wookiees, see this as a great opportunity to kill them as well. So they join into the fun and kill even several more people of Harvest, and then eventually the Covenant just decides to glass half the planet. So from there, that is our first interaction with the Covenant. The Covenant originally did not show up to be violent towards humanity because they knew through different lore beads, they know that the humans are the only ones able to become reclaimers. However, because the San Sharum, the different prophets, the hierarchs, whatever you want to call them, mistranslated this shit hundreds of thousands of years ago, they think that it's called a reclamation, and thus are jealous that humanity is able to do the different stuff and then tries to wage a genocidal war on them to cover up the mistake of the one grunt. push come to shove.
Yeah.
And all kinds of things happen. So humanity realizes that they are so far down bad because they can't do anything to most of their tech. Like their shielding technology is just so far advanced that all the ballistics that humanity has can't really do much outside of like, the super extra heavy ordnance. So we then kind of accelerate to humanity being on the back foot for a very long time. We then get to Reach, where we interact with what is thought to have been like a rebel insurrection. Now, to backtrack a little bit, the Spartan program is already kind of in full effect here, but it's probably going to be important to cover that. So how much of the Spartan program are you all familiar with?
I mean, the series goes pretty in-depth about it, I would say. But like I said, I don't know the lore behind it.
Sure. So we are introduced to ONI then, the Office of Naval Intelligence, led by Halsey.
Yeah.
Or Mom, whoever you want to call her.
Yeah,
a lot of the Spartans call her Mom, even though the stuff that she's done is horrendous.
They're basically kidnapped, is what they say in the show.
Yes, so that is the Spartan 2s, the Spartan Mark 2s. The Spartan 1s were just random people that they just kind of kidnapped and they experimented on. Most of them died. Only 5 ever survived from what I remember reading about. One of them we interact with in the games. We do interact with one of them, but they're not as strong as like the later versions. They are very much prototypes, but they are better. They're able to do different things. So one of those surviving 5 is a lovely man by the name of Sergeant Johnson. Everybody's favorite general sergeant in the UNSC that interacts with John quite often in the video games, has some of the best one-liners in video game history. Man, he knows what the ladies like. Yes. So that's one of the fun things, I'll sidetrack here, one of the fun things in the video games is that the voice lines are different in certain scenes depending on what difficulty you fight in. So, if you're on beginner, normal, easy, hardcore, legendary, some of the voice lines are different. One of my favorites is that they're interacting with the Scorpion tank, or the Scarab, for the first time. It's where's the rest of your platoon? Oh, they're wasted, sir. How are we going to deal with that? It's soldier, are you injured? No. Good. Back in my day, we had to share 2 sticks and a rock between all of us. We've all ran the simulations. They're tough, but they're not invincible. And that line changes. And that carries over through the 3 games that Johnson is in. And it's just a fun detail that I think that they gave this guy extra lines depending on what you do. Now, this guy is super gung-ho. One of my favorite lines I have here.
Any idea what it means?
Dear humanity, we regret being alien bastards. We regret coming to Earth. And we most definitely regret the Corps just blew up our raggedy-ass fleet. Hoorah!
Hoorah! Right?
That.
He's super military, man. He's such a good character. I'm sad that they killed him off in the 3rd game. But it was a good story beat, though. It's an impactful death. But he is a Spartan. He's a Mark 1. In the first game, we see him, able to, basically shrug off the flood infection. He's the only one to, survive, the encounter of, his little group. And it's not really shown, in game, but it's basically implied that because he's a Spartan, he's able to kind of, shrug off the infection, which is kind of crazy. Now, that's the Spartan 1 programs. Most of them did not survive. Johnson did, and I'm glad he did for voice acting and video game reasons. Spartan 2's a bit more diabolical in how they went about it, right? So I imagine they showed it in the show, but Spartan 2's were kidnapped as children at the age of 6 and replaced by a identical clone of the kid who would then die shortly after.
Yeah.
They were then experimented on and upgraded until the age of 9 or something, and then they would be going through the rigmarole. By the age 14, they'd get the suit. They'd get the Mjolnir suit, which is what we see John 117 be in through the entire series. He's in the Mjolnir Mark 1. Now, the Mjolnir suit by itself, I forget what the actual number is. Those suits weigh 800 pounds.
Yeah, they kind of imply that because when they're in the suits and they're walking, you kind of hear that clanking
you hear the thumps, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. But so these suits come with little shielding apertures in them. They're able to do superhuman strength, different things, survive the vacuum of space. You can basically be a superhero in it, right? Now the Mjolnir suits are also able to allow you to survive re-entry and subsequent impact with a planet.
Sweet.
Yes, that is the opening to the third game, is that John, after blowing stuff up, crash lands into a planet, and he and Johnson have a moment, and Johnson tells him that okay, after he gets up, and it's just yeah, he's okay kind of moment. Johnson's just one of these days you could have run into something that's more stubborn than you. Implying that even the planet is not as stubborn as John Halo. Okay. But so we have a handful of 2s that exist. I believe Perez is a Spartan 2 in the show.
She has to be.
I don't. Is she? You talking about the white suits?
Well, the color of suits don't particularly matter. It's more the style.
In the show,
because the Spartan 2 suits are bulky.
Yeah, no.
And the
She
show
might be a Mark III then.
Yeah, in the show, they portray everything that you're mentioning. They show his Silver Team.
Silver Team. Yes.
They show Silver Team they get kidnapped and they see Halsey's their mom. They show some flashbacks of them training, going through some very vigorous training, and you can just tell that these people are just well trained, superhuman, and they have this chip in them as well to kind of remove
emotion.
Yeah, remove emotion. They just follow orders. Period. That's it.
Perfect soldiers.
Yeah, perfect soldiers. And then later on, you kind of watch the development. Some of them remove their chip, some of them don't, et cetera, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But in season 2, later on, they start meeting some of these Marines, and Perez is one of them where she ends up being recruited. But it's a different suit. It's almost smaller. And
so the smaller suits, then.
This is after Reach gets destroyed. So they're on a different planet, and there's these smaller suits where they're trying to retrain people, but these are actually Perez is an adult, right? So they're not starting from a little kid or anything.
Sure.
Like that.
So from Spartan 2s, we're introduced to Spartan 3s. Spartan 3s are designed to be cheaper and easier to produce than the Spartan 2s. So their suits are a bit slimmer. They're more agile. They are basically sent on suicide missions in the lore.
Yeah, and they show that in the series too.
Okay, so those, as opposed to being kidnapped and replaced with clone children, these are war orphans. So, they just go to a random orphanage, and I guess they just yank all the kids.
Well, Perez,
slightly better.
Perez, she was with Master Chief, and then I guess they were in a chapel or something, and that's when the Covenant ended up blowing shit up, and so the apartment complex that her family lived in ends up getting destroyed, and so that kind of answers the whole thing, and she basically does become an orphan, essentially, and so that's when...
And she's not really a kid. You can tell that, man.
She's probably in her 20s. Or
like a 20-year-old Marine or something.
Sure. Then from there, we have Spartan 4s, which are a weird mix between Spartan 2s and 3s. They're more mass-produced, but these people are about as bulky as the Mjolnir, like the original model Mjolnir, and the more streamlined Mark 3s. But these people are actually just volunteers. These are veteran soldiers that are just yeah, I'm signing up for this program. I saw what Master Chief did to those fuckers. I want to do the same shit.
Yeah. And
that's the vibe that you get kind of from them. You don't see too many of them. They show up in the 4th and 5th games. And they have a different kind of approach to things where they're more military based, so they're following orders more strictly, by the book kind of stuff, while John Halo does follow the book for a while, but then he's just this shit's weird. I need to go over there instead of where you all are telling me. I'll be right back. Does his thing.
Yeah, the series.
He does that in the video game a lot.
Yeah, the series portrays that really well. Where, as I mentioned, that he was a soldier. He followed orders for the longest time, but slowly, even with the chip implanted on him, he starts going out on his own, connecting dots on his own, and lack of a word, gaining a conscience, so to speak,
sure.
Thinking bigger picture of I want to win this war, but also want to figure out what's after the war too. Do we really want? So he's the one that kind of connects the dots, the Halo is a weapon, and that's the whole reason why he gets Cortana, is they're trying to bring them, reel them back. It's hey, we need you to start following orders again, so they kind of keep an eye on them. But eventually Cortana, I guess, falls in love with them.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up. There is a interesting relationship between Cortana and
she eventually kind of stabs Halsey in the back and joins John's team where they're working together.
So, fun fact, Colin, do you know that Cortana is uploaded with all of Halsey's memories and personality?
Yeah, they show that in the series.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay, because they bring that up in the lore where it's just okay, she has all the information on top of all the information she has. It's being an AI.
It's very creepy. If you remember season 1, Colin, Halsey makes a clone of herself.
Yeah.
And she, I guess, kills her. At first, you think she's harvesting her organs or something. But I think what she's doing is creating Cortana, that AI. Well, that is what she does in the show.
That is what she ends up doing, yeah.
Okay, that's fun. That's a very kind of odd nod of all things to, I guess, include.
It's very weird to watch her kill
herself.
That was very strange.
Her not self?
Yeah, it was very strange.
Right. But just how Cortana ends up interacting with John over the series, they have a lot of fun one-liners.
I really like that. I love it. Season 1 they did, you'd probably like it, Kenny. Because John does not want Cortana. Doesn't trust her, doesn't want her to be around. Basically every turn just tells her to shut up. And eventually she becomes very useful. She can unlock doors.
Yeah.
In season 2, they have a lot of fun with it in season 2. Where people are how do you know which way to go? He just points the random lights are turning on. He's I'm just. It's kind of clever.
Okay. But we then get into as time progresses, we're introduced to a subplot, which is AI rampancy. Which is after every 7 years, AI need to be reset. Otherwise, they start developing multiple personalities and go insane.
Oh, boy.
That is the plot line of the later games, is Cortana's gone rogue. And stuff is not okay in the galaxy.
Oh, yikes.
That's a bit too deep even for me, because a lot of that is new lore, so there's not much really confirming a whole lot of it. Just know that Cortana has taken control of most of the AI for the most part in the Milky Way galaxy, and has a handful of giant robots that are called Guardians that are very horrifying to deal with.
Yeah, there's none of that in the series. I mean, you can tell that Cortana has I mean, I guess she goes rogue, but not in that way. Like, you can tell that she has some freedom where she makes decisions on her own of like, don't really trust you. I'm going to go over here. And she kind of gets lost a lot of times. Like, a lot of times she'll randomly show up and they'll be like, how'd you get there? And, so she definitely has some flexibility and freedom that you can tell that she's thinking for herself too.
Sure.
Well, she ends up getting stolen, I guess, from Reach, right, by McKee, and then she kind of like helps, air quotes, McKee like make some decisions and gives her some information, I guess, if I remember that correctly, in regards to the Halo. And then that's when when the priests of the Covenant, they have their own little like argument between like what is the main Covenant dude that is helping McKee?
I don't remember his name.
Anyway, so like him and,
was he one of the elites?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew his name. Let me look it up.
So him and like one of the priests for the Covenant, they kind of have like an argument. Like basically, like the priest is like, kill McKee, and he's like, no, she's the one, or whatever the fuck. And so they have this whole little
she's a reclaimer. Don't kill her.
Yeah. So, but then John ends up getting her Cortana back. So I may have to rewatch that. I don't really quite understand what happened there, but
one of the arbiters, I imagine. I'm going to butcher this name, but Gatanai?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not even gonna
Ooga Booga.
Sure. So I guess that brings up, some of the lore behind the Covenant itself. So the Covenant is led by the Sanjarum, one of the ancient races. They managed to survive the handful of times that the rings actually did fire off. And through some sheer dumb luck, they're able to actually get some of the Forerunner tech to work. And they go around the galaxy trying to collect more of it. Through this, they find out that the people that can actually use the majority of the Forerunner tech are the Reclaimers. Now, the Reclaimers, as we find out, are human beings with the special DNA code that allowed them to do it. But they view this as a hyper-religious thing, so they go around and enslave / make deals with different races, right? So the one deal that they make is with the San Healy, which are the elites. We see the arbiters, the guys with the plasma swords, the energy swords, the trademark sword. What do you want to call it? I don't know. But they have they have a deal as opposed to an enslavement, where it's they were also worshiping Forerunners and their tech, but the prophets got it to work, basically. So the Sahili make a deal to be their bodyguards, and they are the elite bodyguards of the leaders of the Covenant. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that we see with the plasma swords. They're the ones that have the fun armor with the weird mouth bits, like the 4-pronged mouth, and also with the fun a bit to go invisible.
Yeah,
whenever they want, because their tech is that advanced. Now, the Arbiters in particular started out as a title of leadership. The Arbiters were the ones that were the governing force. They made the decisions for the Saheli. When they end up dealing with the prophets, they are then made to be the personal soldiers for the ruling class, basically. So they are the mercenaries, is less a sign of honor and more of a sign of shame, because the Arbiters are just about always sent on suicide missions. And they're the ones that go to other planets and make them comply. So that is how they go about, and they make the different other races that are in the Covenant join up with them. They show up to a particular planet filled with a bunch of worms called the Legolas. Those are the little bastards that we find become those big old guys in the video games that have the little arm shield and the plasma cannon.
Yep.
Those are a bunch of worms. They also, from this hyper advanced worm race, also get like low key like warp technology, so they advance their own stuff on top of the already nonsensical Forerunner stuff they have, as along with like the plasma tech that they've able to get. So these worm people are also able to operate a lot of the machinery. In the later games, they're the ones that are running the different Scarab tanks. Fun fact. We then get the Jackal race, which has a burning hatred for the grunt race. For reasons I don't fully understand, but the grudge got so bad that the grunts decided to throw an insurrection. And these grunts, if you're familiar with the games, they really do love grenades, and they're not afraid to kill themselves. So this insurrection got very explosive very quickly. So the Prophets sent in an Arbiter to deal with it. You want to know how they dealt with it, Jake?
Plasma grenades.
Yes. And plasma swords. So what happened is that they captured like several thousand of them and kind of took them into slavery on their ship, while they destroyed their entire planet and sterilized the ones that they saved.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Geez. We then have like the weird bug people that are never really brought up terribly in any important lore, so I'm not going to, but they exist and they're a pain in the ass in the video game. I hate them.
How many games are there?
So, I am glad you mentioned this, because I have a fun list. So, the mainline universe is comprised of Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Wars, Halo 3 ODST, Halo Reach, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition, which has some slight different lore in it because they added some upscale cutscenes and stuff. We have Halo 4, Halo Spartan Assault, Halo 2 Anniversary, Halo Spartan Strike, Halo 5, Halo Wars 2, and Halo Infinite, which is the most current game, having been released in 2021. This has been going on since like the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Halo 2 was...
Yeah, because Halo, I believe, started out by Bungie
So
back in 2001.
Yeah, sounds right. A lot of lore.
There's a lot of
God, I feel old.
Yeah. There's like 30 some odd books.
Yeah, no thank you.
Some of them are important, most of them are not, for the overarching like plot line. But good lord, there's a lot going on.
A lot of lore.
But so the elites eventually learned that, oh hey, the prophets are being a bunch of religious idiots, and they don't realize that the Halos are actually like mass genocide weapons, and are actively by the third game against the prophets. We see our particular arbiter, Vladimir, just the arbiter. They're all called arbiters, just RB arbiters. Most people on the internet call them RBs. Like, RB is our boy. But we then have to go through the video games and deal with the different prophets. We eventually break up the Covenant. That's all that. So John Halo accidentally wakes up and frees the Didact by the fourth game. So then the Forerunners are back, and the Didact is pissed because his in-flight entertainment went out 100,000 years ago and was slowly going insane over that time when he wasn't entertained while in prison.
God.
So naturally, he's just like, okay, humanity is cringe. Time for them to die. And then that is like the plot line of like 4 through 5. Oh boy. There is so much. There is just so much. Go play the video games. They're all fun. Jake, I think you would like Halo Wars, though that is an RTS. So it's very like Age of Empires, very StarCrafty.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Which are canon, by the way.
Oh, good. I'm Halo 2 till I die.
Fair enough.
No, just to kind of bring this full circle. I hope. I mean, there's a lot of lore. I don't know what all they're going to cover outside of bringing from video games to like a streaming service. But I hope they have additional seasons though. I'd watch. I haven't researched if they're going to do season 3 or not, or what's the plan. But I hope there's something. I wouldn't be mad at like a blockbuster film either.
Well, we did get one actually. Called
Yeah,
Forward Unto Dawn.
I thought there was something, but I never watched it.
I don't remember the main actor, but the main actress was one of the Chronicles of Narnia girls. And that was like the second time I'd ever seen her in a film. And I was just like, I recognize you from something. I had to look it up. It was kind of fun. It's like, of all things, you chose this one. So that particular film, I think, was a media tie-in for the 4th game. Because by that point, like the Covenant had more or less been dealt with. The Human Covenant War had ended. The Covenant still existed, but basically the elites had broken off and are just like, okay, this religious shit is dumb. We're going to do our own thing again. Oh, boy. Colin,
What's up, man?
do you have any predictions for the show? Like, where are they going to go? Because it sounds like they've just now introduced the Flood to tie it back into the show.
Yeah, I think more interaction is going to take place on the planet that Halo is on. So that's kind of my prediction, and they'll probably bring in a new character or something, whatever. That's more on the higher end of the command chain, if you will.
Yep.
So somebody's gonna freaking come in, kind of like with what's the dude from season 2, main scientist guy that took Halsey's place.
And well, they took Halsey's place was her daughter, but the main the leader is like Anderson or something.
Yeah,
Keys.
So, what?
Keys?
No, that wasn't it. Anyway, they're gonna bring in somebody and higher in the food chain, if you will, and
Sure.
there's gonna be some protagonist kind of thing going on there. So
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do because they've killed off one Spartan from Silver Team. Another one's she's basically
Out of commission?
Out of commission, to put it politely. And we don't know about, is it Kai? Was that her name?
yeah, Kai.
We don't know about her yet. I assume she's alive, but
Yeah. So there's only like 2 Spartans that survive Reach in the video game. One is named June. He's sent off to be Halsey's bodyguard because the main mission of the Halo Reach we end up is like, okay, go find Halsey on Reach, get her off, and pick up Cortana and get Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn, which in game, I guess John is just on, but at that point of the game, John hasn't interacted with anything, so he's just like asleep on the spaceship. Right? Which is where we get the fun, I guess, difference between the show and the game is that we never see John do anything on Reach. Master Chief does jack all other than stay on the ship the entire time.
he does a lot in the series.
But he does a lot in the series.
Yeah, he does.
Alrighty. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
No, that's it all. Like I said, I hope there's a season 3, and I hope the season 3 has a lot more action and a lot more Spartans.
Okay.
Colin?
Yeah, I would definitely watch another season of the show. I hope they bring in some more familiar actors to fill cast roles for characters, if you will.
I mean, do you think that they really need to if most of the people are going to be in a helmet? If they're Spartans?
Well, no. Like, I don't really care about the Spartan per se, like, but like a known actor to fill that role, whether like a general or like say like a president or some kind of higher up leader. I feel like needs to fill that role.
Oh, geez.
And that's just some rando.
There's a really easy one, actually. In the video games, one of the characters is voiced by Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman
Is Admiral Keyes.
I'd be okay with that.
That'd be a good one.
But he's like 1,000 years old right now, so
But he looks 1,000 years old in the video game, so it works out.
that's interesting. That's a good point. I would give him a shot.
Yeah.
I would give him a shot for sure. But it'd be cool to see more common actors in this series because I feel like it has the potential to expand.
Sure.
And
They're in uncharted waters.
they are.
So, with it going off in their own storyline direction, they can really do whatever they want.
But we'll see for
We'll have to
sure.
see.
Anything from you, Kenny?
Well, with
Obviously,
all the
I need to
reviews,
watch
I need to go watch it now. I will probably continue to play the video games. I think Microsoft has earned that money from me just from how those
Take my money.
right? Just from how those games played out in my childhood and how they have stayed in relative good quality of gameplay over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from there, thank you everybody for listening to the Derby City Fandom podcast. Colin, where can they find us?
You all can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Give us all the likes, all the follows, any comments, suggestions.
We will answer them.
We will definitely answer them for sure.
But yes, thank you everybody, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody.